earlier, a few days ago, you had yourselves an article published on The Athletic by Pierre LeBrun. Take a look at this piece. Why some NHLers are bucking trend of fleeing high-pressure, high-tax Canadian markets. Now, the title is kind of weird. I had to reread that a few times to actually understand what it meant, but the link is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read this. Essentially, this is an article wherein LeBrun analyzes NHL players and their tendencies to leave Canadian markets because they don't like high-pressure, high-tax places. Of course, that's a very big generalization, but essentially, there's a common theme discussed in this article about Canadian markets and about Canadian tax brackets. NHL players are definitely in a position where there are some teams that provide more favorable circumstances in that respect. You've got teams in Florida that pay less tax, therefore you actually walk away with more dollars at the end of the year. You have other teams in the desert like Arizona that don't have the same diehard fans like Toronto does, and they won't crucify you in the media if you end up missing an empty net or something. Things are different across the various markets in the NHL, but today what I wanted to do was go over some comments made by Florida Panthers superstar Matthew Tkachuk. And I think you kind of know where this is going. Tkachuk was a former Calgary Flame. He played in one of these notorious Canadian markets with the harsh fan base and the media and the tax brackets and everything. Now he's in Florida, which is a good team, very good team, good situation financially too when it comes to the payments the players get at the end of the day. But LeBrun did find a way to get some comments out of Tkachuk in regards to his departure from Canada. And it's kind of interesting because these quotes were posted onto Twitter by Andrew Mangiapane is the best breadman at Fiery Breadman. Yeah, somebody's going to have to explain to me what that means. But either way, the link is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read the article yourself. Of course, it's The Athletic. You need a paywalled subscription to read it, but the comments that we care about were indeed posted onto Twitter, which is kinda why I'm making this video. The tweet says this: Matthew Tkachuk really did not like playing in Canada. Something Matthew Tkachuk said to me, Pierre LeBrun, I just love the guy's honesty by the way, after his Panthers eliminated the Maple Leafs last May indicated as much. I asked him if he could appreciate what his Maple Leafs pals Matthews and Marner were going through as far as scrutiny in yet another playoff defeat. I appreciate the fact that it's tough, the former Calgary Flame star said. Playing in Canada is very different with the spotlight and the history. What I've noticed in the difference between playing in Canada and Florida is the highs and the lows. So I think for Matthews and Marner, maybe, and their unbelievable talents, but unless they win the Stanley Cup, they're basically getting crucified. And it's not their fault. It's just kind of the way it is. I know that they're mentally tough enough, and I know them well, and they've been able to handle it and have kept getting better and better in their careers each year. But I know, seeing it from afar, nothing against right here, but I know I wouldn't want to deal with it on any given day. Bingo. Tkachuk is a rock star with the Panthers, but he gets to the rink in flip-flops all season without a soul bothering him, Pierre LeBrun writes. And these comments are pretty indicative as to the American perception of Canadian markets, which is not wrong. I'm not going to disagree with this assessment that, yeah, Matthews and Marner pretty much get crucified by the Maple Leafs fans when the Leafs have a bad showing, or when Matthews and Marner don't show up in a playoff series, or when Marner throws the puck over the glass in a very important game against Montreal. This happens, and we know that Toronto fans have such a crazy dedication and love for the team that it comes across in the most hostile ways once in a while. And you could say this about a lot of other Canadian teams. Vancouver, Montreal, very dedicated fans, passionate fans. Media is always really harsh on them too. Even in the Alberta markets, you could acknowledge that they might be a bit more harsh on their players than many of the American teams would be on theirs. And it's not a bad thing, it's just kind of the way how culture is ingrained into these sports. I mean, hockey is such an important thing here in Canada. It's one of the only sports that most of these cities have access to. Sure, you have the CFL, you have football in there, but when you compare things out, I mean, when you're playing in Florida with the Florida Panthers, the whole state has a bunch of teams to cheer for. You've got the Buccaneers, you've got the Rays, you've got the Miami Heat, the Magic. There are so many different mainstream, top-of-the-line sports teams to pay attention to. So the Florida Panthers are one of however many there are. Whereas here in BC, we only have the Canucks. Sure, we have the BC Lions, sure we have the Vancouver Whitecaps, sure we have the junior teams, but the Vancouver Canucks are the bee's knees. And while that may not be exactly the case in Alberta with Edmonton, Calgary, Rough Riders, Eskimos, etc., but you could still understand the point I'm trying to make here, right? Sports fans in Canadian NHL markets are so much more focused on what it is their teams are trying to do because there aren't many other outlets to express that desire. And so for Matthew Tkachuk to pretty much say, yeah, I can understand that Marner and Matthews, they deal with this stuff. They are getting crucified by the media and by the fans. But for me personally, I don't want anything to do with that. Like, I'm good with where I am. Coming to the rink in flip-flops, yeah, I want to be that low-key guy. It's fine with me. And it's interesting because you have a whole bunch of replies here in the Twitter post talking about how, oh yeah, like Matthew Tkachuk is admitting that he's kind of weak. Oh, he's mentally weak to let the media get onto him that much. He's making millions of dollars to play hockey. He should be grateful to have this opportunity. And that's sort of ingrained into the cultural dynamic of how Canadians view this as well, because it's like, yeah, I mean, he has no choice over where he gets drafted. Drafted by Calgary, 6th overall, made his way over there, was a superstar, 100-point guy. And so, at this point, I mean, Matthew Tkachuk has ascended to this tier, this stratosphere of players where I feel like you could understand where he's coming from, and at the same time, it's fair to say that he can demand where he wants to go. That's essentially what happened last year when he set out his demands for a trade destination, and it's what ended up transpiring. He got traded to Florida. He was willing to get traded to Nashville or St. Louis or Dallas or any of these other teams in the mid to southeast area of the USA. It's a little bit more low-key over there. It's not the biggest deal if you lose a playoff series. It's not the biggest deal, sky is falling, earth is ending, if you lose in the second round, like it is in Toronto, for example. So it makes sense, this perspective, but at the same time, it definitely doesn't leave a positive taste in the mouths of Calgary Flames fans. You have the same article going out there citing some comments from Nazem Kadri, where he expressed the opposite opinion. Of course, I'm Canadian, Kadri said, so I appreciate the country of Canada, and it's where I was born and raised. I've always thought Alberta was beautiful, and I love the city of Calgary. Once I became a local there, I've been to the Stampede, got my first cowboy hat, my first boots. Once you get the hang of it and figure out your life situation and get your family settled, you really start to enjoy being out there and just the passion that they have. The fan base, the sea of red. And so, Nazem Kadri's a guy who, after playing with Toronto, definitely knows what it feels like to be under the media scrutiny. He's embracing the tough pressure the fans and the media place onto these players, and that's his prerogative to do so. Matthew Tkachuk, he might have embraced it for a moment, especially when he made his debut with the team, but over time, I guess he just realized it wasn't for him. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about Matthew Tkachuk speaking out against Canada, pretty much? Speaking out against the Canadian environment of being an NHL star in one of these true North hockey teams? Do you think that the difference in terms of pressure from the media is strong enough to warrant this type of an opinion? Do you think Canadian markets are this difficult to play in that you can sympathize with Matthew Tkachuk when he says that he does not like it? He would rather not have that sort of pressure and crucifixion. Is that the right word? Crucifixion? I'm not too sure. But hey, that's the word that he used, that Matthews and Marner, even though they're good talents, if they're not winning the Stanley Cup every year, they're pretty much getting crucified. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How does this Matthew Tkachuk situation affect his time spent in Calgary? How does it affect the way Calgary fans perceive him? Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.